I welcome you all to this post-screening discussion of Our Metropolis. We're glad to have Gautam, Sonti and Usha with us, the directors of the film. And I think having seen the film, we were surprised by how much labor must have gone into making it, getting a sense of the shots that were woven into that sequence and tell a very strong story. And I think I would like to begin. Of course there are a couple of things that I want to talk about, but I think for me the most the striking thing that you have built up initially is the duality between an external world that is changing and this internal world of the dancer, which remains the same. So I like that polarity which you have created. So, if you could talk to us a little bit more about how you conceived the story in that way, and so if you could.
See the internal world of the dancer. She's fighting this external world purely on legal terms, at least according to them, and it seemed true to us too, that everything that they did with her property departed from the law, and being US residents at that time, she wanted to shift back and come back to that property and set up a dance school. Now of course that's not possible. So when you say internal reality, it wasn't some I'm not sure what exactly you mean by that, but it wasn't some dream world she was living in. She wanted, very much, she's grounded very much in the reality of, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say that so that is the nature of this kind of rapid change, which comes upon your doorstep, literally comes to your doorstep without giving you too much notice. And as Gautam said, without giving you a space to even contest it. So in the case of Malini, what happened was, the house for her is, as you say, her eternal world. It is her past. It's a multiple generational past. It is her, carries the ethos of what it means to belong for her. But when the metro arrives at her doorstep, she is forced to confront it, and not confront it very successfully, because as Gautam was pointing out, what we have done is we've not fully captured the details of that story, where she's fought back on grounds of first of all not having been consulted about how she's going to be compensated, how much land is going to be taken, the arbitrariness of it, and the fact that the metro is coming in a neighborhood which already has a large flyover across it. So when we met her, the point she was trying to make is neighborhoods have become places that flyovers and metros pass over. Everyone wants to go from one point in the city to Electronic City or to some other place they work. They don't see the value of neighborhoods, what's happening to neighborhoods. And so she actually fought the metro on those grounds and said, why are you putting a pillar destroying my whole house to put one pillar when there's a flyover on which you can take the metro. The film is really a collision of worlds. We've captured the collision of people's personal, individual worlds versus some image of what a city should look like, and the ground reality of how that image translates, be it widening of roads, or be it coming of a metro line, or demolitions for building something else.
Yeah, before we open up the floor, that's basically what I meant by internal world is as you say, it's the interiors you show, while other times you're showing the exterior world, and as the interior is also a metaphor for her own internal world. In that sense, I thought the dynamic comes out really well, and also the very choice of the fact that she's an art. It's probably by sheer coincidence that she happens to be a dancer, someone who practices an art form. And I think this duality between the brutal world of construction and how much it's juxtaposes very interestingly with a more delicate world, that is the world of art. I mean, because one of the things initially, but the way you had crafted, there were moments when you had used the construction, the noise of the construction in an almost musical way, right? And I mean, I was reminded. I mean, of course, we can talk about the issues, but for me, I can't help but appreciate it in pure cinematic terms, because I was reminded of this Tarkovsky film called The Steamroller and the Violin, which is really about this person who is working as a construction, road construction, and in a steamroller, and he befriends this violin kid who plays the violin, and the way they have both, at least in that movie, tried to build a harmony. So and it's as if initially the film is in some sense speaking in cinematically to such genres as well. So for me that was very interesting. But that apart,
quite nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean I was also.
I haven't seen that particular film, but Tarkovsky does use sound very interestingly, very and many films.
Yeah.
Sound of Water especially, he seems to love the Sound of Water.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the soundscape is a very important thing in the film, in this film.
Yeah. Indeed, in fact, on that note, this is one conversation which I was reminded, and I think we can open up the floor after that, where there's this discussion about what would happen in China. Mm-hmm. That in China there wouldn't even be a democratic consultation with stakeholders, or even the facade of it, right? And it's very interesting that one of the great Chinese filmmakers, I mean probably the greatest considered alive, Jia Zhangke, some of his films actually deal exactly with this transformation of China. Where he talks, there's this movie which we screened, in IIT Delhi once, called Still Life, which talks about how, these, for example, as you show, these almost magical transformations that are happening overnight, which you kind of slow down for us, and, the debris and the way in which these houses are falling apart, and, that's so bizarre that it's almost beautiful, that sense. In fact, there was a shot where the crane looks like the silhouette of the crane looks like a dinosaur,
Yes.
So I thought that those images, I think, it's interesting that there is a poetry to disaster, so to speak. So, I mean,
in fact, the person, the metro chap who we were coordinating with, he spoke of it as an animal. And he said, "Oh, that monster is coming today. You must come and see it." And in fact, we went many times in the middle of the night to try and find that monster, but it never arrived in the city so we had to go about 7 or 8 times in the middle of the night too. But yeah, it does seem like this monstrous thing that's coming to devour the city. I think the reason why maybe I had a little bit of trouble understanding the internal is also because Malini is actually, obviously belongs to a very elite section of society, and also not living here so much. So I'm having a little trouble relating that to her internal world only. I mean, she was thinking of it as something for a school rather than she wasn't preserving necessarily her own memories of that place. Oh no, I guess she was also. She was. No, also she's certainly disturbed by the breaking up of the neighborhood, because that's something that deeply concerns her. The school that went and the library that went. So those are things that
the trees, which were the first to go.
That's true. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if one thinks of it as there's also a nostalgia. One doesn't want to see it as purely hanging on to a nostalgic past, or a nostalgic hanging on to the past, especially for someone who belongs to that elite section of society. Because it's not only that, it's, there's a breaking of the law,
So I think at a general note, most of the characters in the film are not being nostalgic so much as questioning what they see as a coming apart of democracy, coming a part of transparency and not having a say in what's happening with their city. And some of these, for people who have always been in, at the lower end of the social spectrum, it's routine that you get pushed around, you get moved out without due consideration. But and much of the protests that you see in the film many of them are middle class people out there protesting, because we've sensed for the first time there was a feeling among middle class people that their world was being shaken, and that they did not have a voice in saying what they wanted the city to be, or to even voice their concerns over the metro line coming into their parks. So that's the consultation, quote unquote consultation you see in the scene where the metro officials are there in the park and people are trying to have a conversation and they're being actually shut up. So that is I think it was a new thing in Bangalore at that point of time. That so it was more this anger about not so much, oh, this is going back to the good old days, but we are losing control over our own city. And we are losing a way of life. And Malini described it sometimes. She said, I could go out on the pavement and call out somebody across and call the peanut guy from outside. But I can no longer do that. So when something comes and changes the whole neighborhood, those little acts of everyday become impossible.
And maybe the other thing that shifted at that time was this coming together of middle class, I suppose just upper middle class people who are losing their homes, maybe for the first time, that it happened in this city at least, with so aligning of people like that with, say, street vendors or with slum dwellers. You don't find usually protests where all of them come together, and many of the activists are perhaps responsible for making that happen, of bringing these really disparate groups together to protest. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we're having this little bit of discussion on the cinematic thing also, because oftentimes very few people actually open that up. So thank you for doing that, because everyone dives into issues.
So, so on that note, I thank you both. It was wonderful to have you. I hope we'll get to have you again and have more interesting conversations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for such a close reading and viewing of the film. It's really feel very happy that we have such a nice close an audience which has watched it so carefully.